Hello everybody, Howard Cooper here, and I am super excited to be welcoming you to the first anxiety live session of January 2025. I can't believe 2024 went like that. And there was a time back in April, May, June, I said I was going to do these every month, and I did try for a bit. And also I was putting out a little bit of content, but I fell off the wagon. But I have started the new year with good intentions, good resolutions, and even more importantly, I have found someone to edit my videos, which for those of you who don't know about the filming of the YouTube production stuff, the filming and the writing is the easy part. It's the time taken to edit and put it all together and make it look somewhat engaging. It's not quite like these lives that I do, which is a bit more impromptu, a bit more organic. But that's going to save me a huge amount of time, and I'm really pleased. In the last video that I put out last week on globus hystericus, the feeling of tension in the throat, I didn't edit that. My editor did. He did a great job, and I'm filming the next one tomorrow. Next week, we're sending out the next one, so this is going to be more regular. I'm really pleased about that. So who have we got joining at the moment? We have, hello, Howard from Portugal. Hello. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. And look, unless people write comments or tell me where they're from or engage in this, it really does feel like I am just sitting in my office talking to myself. So what would be really great, if you are tuning in right now, let me know who's there, where you're from, and what you're hoping to get out of this session. And also, for those of you who have done any of the Beating Anxiety lives previously, what you'll notice that I kind of used to structure them quite heavily, and we'd go do technique of the week, but actually I found real value in sometimes just having sessions where we'd open up the floor and say, right, tell me what's going on with you. What help do you need specifically? And then we can kind of tailor it to exactly what you need. Roy says, yo, Howard. Yo, good to see you. It's always nice at the beginning where we see people tuning in as we go. Also, I have been going back over the questions on the channel, and here's the thing. Some of my videos get, a couple of thousand views, and some, there's a few that have got over, I think, 100,000 views now. One on air hunger, and I just did one on, as we talked about, globus hystericus, the feeling of tension and lump in throat. And often I get questions from people where I don't have time to respond to them. You get 17 comments. It's hard. So this is a really good place to catch up a little bit and go, right, I've had this comment. What's my response? Rebecca, hello. Good to see you from Cambridge. There we go. Oh, now I know. Equine assisted training. I know who that is, aka Sarah. Yes, welcome to the YouTube live. Okay, all right. So I think we should dive in. And I did promise as well that there is what I think is a big illusion behind anxiety that I think a lot of people miss. And it's something that I realized once during a session. It was like this moment where my brain went, oh my word, so many clients are falling for this. And I think if you kind of can see this illusion and you catch yourself, it can be really liberating to kind of explore that. So we will come to that, but obviously, I've got to dangle that out there so that you have a reason to stay on the line, as well. George says, hi, Howard. Ha, there we go. I know quite a few Georges. I don't know which one, but there's a Tottenham logo. Who knows which one that could be? Gosh, there's several Georges I know, but there you go. All right. So the first thing is because this is going to be led by you, what specifically is causing you to get anxious? That is the big question. What triggers your anxiety in your perception? What are the things that seem to cause it? Where are the places in your life, contexts where perhaps you wish you were able to be more resourceful in the way you navigated the world? Or what physical sensations come up that you find get in the way? These are really good questions just to help you kind of go back into your mind and think, okay, where might I need a little bit of help, support, or a different way of looking at things? So that, I think, would be a worthwhile thing. And then drop them in the comments below, and I can then handle them and address them. And we've already had a question here from Roy. I'm going to put it up here. Here we go. There we go. Roy says, in fact, I need to stop trying to make it a bit. Oh, there you go. That's better. I'm going to have a play at some point with this technology and see if I can find a way of doing it so it pops up smoothly without me having to resize this. There we go. Can I ask about oxygen levels going up and down and feeling like I'm going to collapse? I have had checks with the doctor and told I'm fine. Okay. I would need more information about that one. Presumably, when you say you've been to the doctors about that, they've put the pulse oximeter on your finger, and probably it tells you you're 96 plus, all likely within the normal range, hence probably the doctor's saying you're fine. But I'm guessing if you're asking that question, it may be because you are suffering from this horrible condition, which I did a big video on YouTube called air hunger. And it's this sensation that you're not taking in enough oxygen. And the big issue here is that it's actually an illusion. It's nothing to do with oxygen. It's to do with which is why the doctor puts the pulse oximeter on your finger and says you're fine. It's just anxiety. But what's actually happening is you become hypersensitive to carbon dioxide, which it's funny, at school, we're always told, aren't we, that oxygen is good and we breathe it in, we need it. Carbon dioxide is the waste gas. However, it's not strictly true. It's not that carbon dioxide has no value. Carbon dioxide is really important in terms of helping the body balance your pH levels. And if you have been overbreathing a lot of time, maybe because of anxiety, and let's be honest, when people get anxious, they overbreathe. Why? Because saber-toothed tiger running towards you, that's not the time you're going to sit back and I think it's time for some meditation. Of course not. Your body is going to start increased respiration, getting ready for fight, flight, or freeze. And so, overbreathing over time gets rid of too much carbon dioxide. Your body stops being able to tolerate carbon dioxide because you're not getting used to it as much. And then eventually you end up having this feelings of air hunger. It comes from being hypersensitive to carbon dioxide. It's not an oxygen deficiency. So, of course, look, if you feel like you can't breathe, go to the doctor, let them check you out. But when they say you're fine, it will be more likely to do with you becoming hypersensitive to carbon dioxide, and practicing gentle breathing, gentle restrictive breathing will gradually build up your tolerance back so that you don't have that experience. The other thing that can happen, by the way, just in terms of if anyone feels anxious, they can hyperventilate, and you can then start worrying, what if I faint? What if I collapse? What if I die? All of that kind of stuff. And the fear of that happening, those thoughts that spiral, kind of trigger that cycle of anxiety even more. So as best as possible, it's worth staying on the line, because we're going to cover some of those illusions shortly that I think will help as well bust that idea around the fear of collapse when anxiety strikes. Who have we got? Linda from Scotland. Oh, and she's on vacation in Portugal. Hang on a second. You're telling me, Linda, you are in Portugal right now on your holiday, and you've decided you're not going by the, to see the evening entertainment. You're not sitting in a restaurant. You're sitting in your hotel room watching my YouTube? If so, I am absolutely flattered. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Catherine, hello from Scotland. Okay. Roy, I'm hoping that made sense. Let me know if that resonated with you. And while we're waiting for some other questions to come in from you live right now, let me bring up another. Oh, bless her. Linda says she is absolutely watching me on her holiday. That's. I am flattered. I really do appreciate that. I was wondering, because a few people have been commenting, even though I made a video on it a little while ago, but a lot of people on my YouTube channel have been commenting on morning anxiety. And I've had a few inquiries as well from people specifically talking about, I feel anxious in the morning. I wake up, anxiety is just there. Is that anyone else's experience? Does anyone else experience that kind of, and some people even say they just wake up with a jolt. It's like they go from totally asleep to, poof, I'm awake, and their heart's thumping, and some people have had that. And I would like to explain a little bit about what that's about and kind of how you can treat it. Because I think it surprised me that this is something that I've known about for years. Rebecca says yes. This is something I've known about for years, but a lot of therapists and doctors are not either aware of it or they're not sharing this with people, which is your body has a cortisol levels, that's the stress hormone, which rise and fall very naturally throughout the day and the night. But the spike of cortisol kind of spikes normally around 6-ish in the morning. Can be different for different people, but it's often as you're about to get up, you have this very normal and very natural cortisol spike. The stress hormone goes up, and it's there so that if you were, think back to being hunter-gatherers. We're in the cave, we're minding our own business, we're sleeping with our straw and our fur on. If you wake up and there were a saber-toothed tiger standing over you, you would need to have your wits about you to be able to act quickly. So the normal phenomenon is, and lots of these are evolved protection mechanisms, the cortisol level spikes in the morning at the point where you need to wake up so that you can, I'm awake, I can deal with whatever life throws at me. It's kind of normal. I think something happens, though, if someone has a tendency towards anxiety. What happens is their baseline cortisol level, their average cortisol level, is likely higher than someone who doesn't have that same anxiety response. And therefore, the cortisol spike when they have it in the morning is going to be even more extreme. So it will feel like it's even more of a problem than for many people. Many people won't even notice it that much. But if you struggle with anxiety, then chances are morning is likely a harder time for you. And then it begins to peter out. So I think the two things to remember is A, it's normal. And B, the way to deal with it is not to focus on, let's say, how do I get rid of morning anxiety? It's how do I, in general, lower my anxiety response throughout the day? Because if we can just lower all of the stress throughout the day, then when the very natural and normal cortisol level comes up and spikes in the morning, which it will do, it's going to be lower and less noticeable. And that, I think, is going to be really useful. But I think one of the things is, if you can bear in mind that it is normal, it really will help you stop getting absorbed into that story of, oh my God, why am I getting anxious in the morning? Why am I getting anxious in the morning? Why am I getting anxious in the morning? Why am I? Because if we buy into that and we get really caught up in that story, then what happens is we end up getting so tense during the day, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we spend the whole day getting stressed about it because we're, oh, what if it's a problem? What if? And then when we have it in the morning again, we go, you see, I knew it. It absolutely is a problem. So that's what I'd share about morning anxiety. Roy, let's have a look here. He says, oh, yeah, that makes sense. He was talking about the feeling of not getting enough oxygen. It makes sense how, but it's scary. It is scary, that feeling. I have seen a cardiologist and been given a clean bill of health, yet the symptoms persist. This is, it actually leads me on to I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'm curious just to hear from you, because at the moment I've got 17 people tuning in live. I know there will be a lot of people who watch these after and they watch the replays, and that's why I like to do them, because it gives people more stuff organically to just mull over and chew over. But yeah, I will do it. I'm curious. How many of you, when you go to the doctors with something that you suspect is anxiety, how many feel fobbed off? Where they sort of imply that anxiety it's just anxiety. Is that anyone's experience? I'm really genuinely curious. Or do you feel like they take it very seriously? Do they kind of help you and make you feel like it's okay and give you suggestions? Or is it just like, well, try and relax? Is it all just the platitudes that they just come out with? So I'm curious, what is your experience with traditional healthcare if you go with anxiety? The other question that I'm curious, and please do let me know in the comments, is I've had so many people over the years, and it's this really interesting mix with health anxiety, where if someone, like, there's this duality, they go to the doctor because they're anxious about a particular symptom, and they have this weird duality of wanting the doctor to find something wrong with them in order to explain the physical symptoms that they're having, and at the same time not wanting the doctor to find anything that's wrong with them because that would make them too afraid. And I think that it's fascinating. People have said to me, I hope they give me a reason why I have this. That would be better. Then my anxiety would not spiral. But I also hope I'm not sick or ill or have something wrong with me. And it's like, how often do we have these paradoxes with anxiety? And I think anxiety, sometimes the experience of it can kind of make us feel like we're backed into a corner. We're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. It's like being caught between a rock and a hard place. Catherine, that's really interesting. They drastically downplay anxiety. They seem not to have training about it, just platitudes. Yeah, when I was suffering with anxiety, I remember a doctor telling me that what I needed to do was to get a hobby. It's like, get a hobby. That's the solution. Get a hobby. But look, I also have frustrations on their behalf too, because they are time poor often, and they've got like 3 minutes to see each person, and that they can't go through the whole, taking the time to really hear. So, which is a shame, and I think that structurally and fundamentally, I think there is a problem with the medical world. But I think one of the problems is they treat us like a piece of meat. So if there's nothing wrong physically, they don't realize that the mind and body are so connected. And sometimes, I've heard I was on an anxiety forum earlier, and I heard someone complaining about the doctor saying something to them, which quite frankly was inaccurate, but it terrified them. It's like when they start talking about possible side effects, and the anxious brain what we tend to do is we like hearing the stuff that's good. And you could hear 99 things that are good, but if the doctor says one bad thing, we don't focus on the 99 good things he said. We focus on the one thing he said that was bad, and that's kind of the anxious mind at work. So let's have a look here. Yes, regarding air hunger, it's not understood by medics. No, it's not. They tend not to, and the technical term is chronic hyperventilation syndrome or respiratory alkalosis. But nevertheless, they just kind of go. I mean, when I had air hunger, that feeling that I couldn't breathe really badly, I do remember saying, I feel like I can't breathe. And a doctor looked at me and just went, yeah, but you can, can't you? I was like, that doesn't help. Just telling me that my experience is not correct or inaccurate is, I don't think that's the right way to do things. Catherine says, I had a bad reaction to medication. They said it was my anxiety bringing it on myself. No recognition of mind-body. Right. Now, absolutely. So I think there's something interesting here, which is, I think anxiety can bring stuff on. That's true. And unfortunately, these days, people often interpret when we say anxiety can bring something on or that it has a psychosomatic cause, they can often hear or feel like we're calling them a hypochondriac, that they're making it up. But take it from me, anxiety can cause very real physical symptoms. I also think it's entirely possible that people can have real reactions to medications, and doctors, sometimes if the reaction that we have doesn't fit their model of what the drug should do, they're not very good at always hearing another possibility. Maybe I really am having a reaction to this medication. I always remember having a weird. I went on a drug one time. I can't remember why, but I remember having some back pain, which came on the left-hand side, and it really hurt. And it was after about 2 weeks of being on this medication. And I went to the specialist, and he said, "How are you getting on?" I said, I think I'm having some sort of side effect from this, which is my back is on this side. It's absolute agony. It's really like the muscles sore, and it's. And he said to me, no, that's not a reaction to that. No, I haven't heard of that one before. And then totally dismissed it. And I was thinking about this afterwards, because, by the way, I ended up stopped taking the medication and that cleared up straight away. So make of that what you will. But I thought, if a doctor, upon hearing, that my back was playing up, immediately just goes, that's not a side effect, and discounts it. What happens in 2 months' time when someone else comes and goes on the same drug and goes, I've got some weird back pain? He won't remember that I said it because he hasn't logged it as important. So he will have no memory trace of, someone once saying that. So over time, he'll just dismiss all the times that people say anything outside of his very, very linear, rigid set of side effects. So he's not open to anything new. And I think that is one of the things that anxiety sufferers sometimes battle with. One, getting attention appropriately from the medical professionals who understand anxiety and how it works. And then on the other hand, often being able to distinguish what's a real issue versus what's an anxiety issue. It can be really challenging. And that's why I always say, look, if you've got any medical concerns, go to the doctor. If they do the basic checks and they say, actually, you're all right, then chances are it is anxiety, and doing lots of the anxiety work around, which I'll show you in a moment, some interesting stuff to do around it, will be of great use. Roy says, yeah, the side effects of medication can make you worse initially. This is not an attractive proposal when you already feel tapped out. Absolutely. Yeah, there are certain medications when you first start, it's difficult, and there's a period as you move into them and adjust into them. Absolutely. If someone had a reaction to peanuts, presumably they wouldn't say that. I feel like I've been labeled a hypochondriac. Yeah, and it's such a shame because The idea of hypochondriac is like you're making it up. And regardless of whether it's a physiological cause or a psychosomatic cause, the suffering and your experience is real. And I think they have a duty of care to be able to do what they can to help you alleviate suffering and not make it worse by fobbing people off with, well, you're just being a hypochondriac. I think, yeah, so my heart goes out to you. So if you've got any questions, feel free to keep putting them up there. But let me share a little something with you all. One of the videos that I did was on beating the anxiety loop. And I think this is such an important thing to kind of understand or to get into your mind, which is, if you look at how anxiety works, anxiety, and here's a crazy thing to say, I would argue anxiety is the opposite of hypnosis. Sorry. Correction. Anxiety is hypnosis. I can't believe I said that. Got it totally wrong. Anxiety is hypnosis. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at what hypnosis actually is. Imagine, you ever had the experience where someone takes a blackboard and then they take their fingernails and then they reach over and they, you know, that horrible feeling? Now, if you're watching this right now, probably some of you, and let me know, would have had this real sensation of squirminess inside. And if I said, where did that squirmy feeling come from? You might say, well, it was the nails down the chalkboard. But at that moment, there was no nails. Look, they're barely there. There was no chalkboard. I just drew a square. And then I just made that face. So that sound was just in your head. You imagined it. And you imagined it so vividly for a split second that your body then had a real response. That was hypnosis. Hypnosis for me is when your body responds to thoughts, imagination, as though it's real. Think about that. When you imagine something and then you kind of perceive that imagined thought as real, your body has a real response. That's hypnosis. So why do I say anxiety is hypnosis? Well, think about this. If you're afraid of dogs, as an example, what are you doing? You're likely picturing dog coming up to you and attacking you and biting you. And at that moment, it's not happening. But because you imagine it, and then you forget that you are imagining it, your body goes and gets a real feeling of anxiety. You get this real sensation. And then because you get this real sensation, you then do this thing where you look back and you go, this is a real sensation of anxiety. Therefore, these images and thoughts and this imagination that I've got caught up in must really be real. So because you then go more into this thought of dog biting you, you get the sensation more. Because you get the sensation more, you get more caught up in this thought. It's going to happen. Oh my word, I can really see it. And you go round and round and round. That is hypnosis. You're responding to imagination as though it's real. It is the same thing. And that is what happens. So when someone says, for example, you know, let's say they're hyperventilating, maybe they're struggling to breathe. And hold on a second, who was it? Roy? Oh, goodness me, Roy. £5 from Roy Boxing. Sorry for hogging the chat. Thanks for the words of cup. Oh, bless you, my friend. Thank you. It's very, very, very kind of you. Thank you. I don't think it's ever happened to me before. £5. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't even know that was a thing. Where were we? God, it's broken my pattern. People giving money to me. Amazing. Amazing. Absolutely no problem at all. Where were we? The anxiety loop. I remember now. Images and words. If you get very absorbed into them, you get the real feeling. So the person who's going, oh my God, the dog is going to bite me, they spiral round between the images and the words and the feelings, right, of it. And then each one reinforces the other. And that's why I say it's hypnosis. We're imagining and getting caught up in that imagination. One of the things that really helps, though, is to figure out which way you start this. So some people will start with a thought, like an image or a word in their mind, like catastrophic thinking. What if I faint? What if I collapse? And then what they do is then they feel anxious because they got caught up in those thoughts. And then because they got caught up in those thoughts, they get more absorbed into the what if I collapse thought. That's one thing. The other way round is someone might feel lightheaded and they have a real sensation at that moment. And if they have a real sensation inside of I'm going to collapse or I'm going to faint, it's then exacerbated and made worse because they then start imagining very quickly, oh God, I'm going to collapse because of this. And that's the thing that then kicks off that anxiety loop. But it didn't start with a thought. It started with a real feeling. So, for example, health anxiety sufferers often do that thing where they start with the sensation. So they don't just go, what if I'm ill? What they do is they walking along, and then they do have a real headache. They get a slight headache. The real headache triggers them to imagine, what if it's a tumor? And imagine them getting worse. And then, because they imagine that, they get caught up in the thoughts of it, they get the anxious feeling, and then they go back into the thoughts, anxious feeling, into the thought, and so on. That is kind of where it starts, but it often starts with a real physical sensation. So what do you do if it does start with a real physical sensation? Right? I think it is a big piece here is to, I'm going to say something, it's going to sound crazy, I know, but bear with me. Let me explain. I would argue there's no sensation that actually is a threat. There's no sensation that actually poses a threat to you. And I know that sounds crazy because some of you are going to be going, no, but if I can't breathe, surely that's a threat. And if I feel like my chest is tight or my throat's closing up, and these feelings, these sensations are a threat. But I'm going to ask you a question. Imagine I had a magic button that when I pressed it, whatever unpleasant sensation you were feeling would just immediately vanish. Immediately. So if you had a headache, you could just pull out your magic button and it would just vanish. Imagine you had that button. If you had it, you felt like your throat was closing up, you had a lump in the throat, and you had this magic button, you just pulled it out. Feeling gone. Sensation gone. If you had that button with you all the time and you knew it always got rid of whatever unpleasant sensation it was, how afraid of that sensation coming up would you be? That's the question. That's the question. And while you're mulling that over and then letting me know in the comments, I'm just going to have a look down and see, because I saw a few comments coming in. Being tricked by nosy neighbours. Tingling in my body and almost feel... Okay. Right. Yeah. There we go. Catherine says, wouldn't be afraid at all. Right. I love that. I'd be mashing that button all the time. Right. I like the comments, but it's not the question. It's, would you be afraid of the feeling? The answer is yeah, you wouldn't be afraid. Absolutely. And this is a really interesting thing that a lot of people miss, which is it's not the sensation itself that causes the fear or the anxiety. It's the thoughts that you add to the sensation. Because the thing is, if you had no fear, if you knew you could get rid of it immediately, that tells us it's not the feeling itself that causes the anxiety. It's the story that you add to it of, what if it never goes? What if it gets worse? What if I never get better? What if I can't manage this? What if this means something terrible about me? What if I'm really ill? It's the spiraling thoughts and stuff that you add to the sensation. It's not the sensation. It's never the sensation. It's always the thoughts. Does that make sense? And I would argue air hunger is really frightening. It is. It is really frightening. That feeling that you're suffocating, it is. But the anxiety around it comes not from the sensation, but it's the story and the thoughts that we add to it of, what if it doesn't get better? What if I'm not going to be like this? And so on and so forth. That's a really big difference. There we go. Let's have a look here. So here's an interesting thing, right? I want you to remember a really profound statement. And honestly, I think this is probably one of the most profound things that I've shared on a YouTube live. So don't go anywhere, because you're going to want to hear this. There's something that you can say to yourself if ever you catch yourself having these thoughts that appear, where the thoughts of what if this happens, what if that happens, what if it gets worse, which ends up being the trigger of this feeling and this spiraling anxiety. And the thought that I want you to remember, so write it down somewhere so that you don't forget this, is, I'm just making shit up. That's it, right? You just say to yourself, oh, I'm making shit up. Because it's not happening in that moment. It's not the future you're seeing. It's not you you're seeing. It's just you creating an imaginary story with no evidence, or very little evidence. It's just a story, and you have to remind yourself, this is just a thought. I'm making shit up, right? You're just making shit up, right? Or if you really want to deep dive into this, though, I would even argue you're not making shit up, because there's no you. Nonsense thoughts are just appearing, right? Technically, because I don't think we choose our thoughts anyway, so they're not really yours, but hey, it's catchier. I'm just making shit up, right? It stays with you. And sometimes there are times where I catch myself going, oh my God, what if this happens? And what if this? And then and I go, oh, no, making shit up again. It's not happening. I'm just making shit up. And it reminds me, it like jolts my system and reminds me, oh, right, I don't have to run these whole stories. That's all. It still amazes me how powerful the mind is, that it can make you feel physically ill. On the other hand, it can be very powerful, positive tool too, so you can get hold of it. Absolutely. And you know that spiral that we talked about, where you imagine like dog biting you, and then you get so caught up in it, you feel like it's going to happen, and you feel anxious, and then the anxious feeling comes up, so you get more. You can go the other way too. You can use it. So, if someone, makes an image of them delivering their next presentation with great ease, then guess what? If they get absorbed into that thought and story, then they'll begin to feel like, oh, I could do this. I could do this. Yeah. And then the more they feel like they can do it, the more they get absorbed into the thought of I can do this. And then they can go positive movement in the right direction as well. So it's not that these thought patterns that we have are bad. It's just that they're useful at times and not useful at other times. And, I'm a great believer in let's have our cake and eat it. I think that's probably also why I put on about a stone over the Christmas period, but I've lost a fair bit of weight since then as well. I've been doing a mixture of carnivore diet and keto diet, and the weight is beginning to fall off me, which is good. But yes, going back to having your cake and eat it. Listen, if we don't have to know that we're thinking the whole time, because all of our experience are all thoughts, right? It's all just us making shit up. But if I have good thoughts that make me feel good, I'm happy to let them go. I'm just happy to let myself become absorbed in them. Why? Because why not? It's working for me. It makes me feel good. Great. On the other hand, if I have stories and thoughts that come up that are not useful, these are the ones that I allow myself to go, making shit up, not useful. And with that in mind, I wanted to kind of share this kind of hidden illusion that a lot of people miss. And I think if you can get this, it's going to be hugely useful, which is what I would call meta thoughts. The power of meta thought. Now, what are meta thoughts? Meta thoughts are the thoughts that we have about our experience. So, for example, let's go back to the person who's imagining dog coming towards them and attacking them. The thought is they're imagining dog coming and attacking them. And they might go, oh, just making shit up. There we go. That's fine. But some people then have another voice in the back of their head that goes, but it could happen, couldn't it? That's a thought about their thoughts. That one's, but what if it did happen? That's a meta thought. And the illusion is that some people think that the meta thought, that little voice that goes, it could happen though, and what if it did? That is also just a thought. People think that it's truth or themselves or like a premonition, but it's not. It's just more shit that you're making up. Even the voice that goes, but it could happen, that's also just a secondary thought. That's still just as much you making up shit as the initial one. There we go. Yes, it's very difficult to understand that we feel so bad, but it's not threatening. Right. One of the things that I would do is really get curious. And I would break down the sensations as a way of looking and getting better at this. So rather than going, I feel anxious or I feel like I can't breathe, pay really good attention to your body and get curious about what specifically am I feeling? And be sensory about it. So for example, I'm feeling the sensation of tightness in my chest. I'm feeling heart beating. I'm feeling moisture in hands. I'm feeling tension in shoulders. I'm feeling pulsing in my stomach. Now, that might be all of those things together gives you the feeling of anxiety or suffocating or anything like that. But it's hard to deal with it all as one big thing. It's harder to see it as not threatening. Whereas if you just tune into one of those, for example, moisture in hands, sweaty palms, moisture in hands. Is the feeling of moisture in hands right now actually a threat to me? Well, no, not the feeling of moisture in my hands. Just that bit of it. No, that's not a threat. That's a really useful practice to do. So rather than being overwhelmed by whole feelings, start to get better at chunking them down and go, what specifically am I feeling? And then taking each one of those sensations by itself as a way forwards. I'm not sure what this was in relation to. What? It was either me rambling about meta suggestions and Roy going, yeah, what? Or it was in relation to something else. I don't know. It wasn't clear. I did my best. This is easier sometimes when I'm doing one-on-one work with people and we take them and we help them begin to kind of see it and experience it. And I think maybe I'm doing it a disservice by trying to ramble through it quickly to give it to you. Who knows? Here we go. Someone says, Dasparasa. Howard, when you were suffering with anxiety, did you get medication or professionals to help you fight it? Or you just coped with it without any substances or external help? No, I went on medication. But my story is, I mean, we are talking like 20 years ago, 24, 25 years ago now. When I was 15, I was diagnosed as having a severe panic attack and anxiety disorder. And at the time, I knew nothing about anxiety. I just thought I was dying. I had every symptom of anxiety you could imagine. I had air hunger. I was agoraphobic. I was having daily panic attacks. I was just not functioning. I was not coping. And I genuinely thought this was it for me. My parents were very concerned. They ended up taking me to the doctors. And the doctor referred me to a psychiatrist who put me on antidepressants. And I always remember saying, it was interesting. I said, but why are you putting me on antidepressants? I said, I don't feel depressed. I just feel really fed up of being anxious and not knowing how to get out of it. And I just worry that it's always going to be like that. And he said, well, no, these are the things to take, and didn't know any better. So I ended up doing that and taking them for a good long while, a long time alongside having psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. And I really liked my therapist. I really do have very fond memories and really did enjoy the sessions with her. But looking back, it was a long process. It was week in, week out. And at the end of this sort of week in, week out process, I remember getting her theory as to why I was like I was. And I didn't really feel that much better, but what I got was her theory as to why I was like I was. And it dawned on me I wasn't really interested in a theory. What I actually wanted was just a different way of relating to my thoughts, or practical solution-focused tools that I could use so that I would feel better. That's what I actually wanted. And that's why I ended up leaving that kind of approach and going and doing a bunch of other methods of help. But I often get the question these days, like, do you recommend medication for me, or using other techniques? Look, and I don't have a hard line to follow here, other than I think everyone is different, and you take every case in and of its own merit. I'm also not a doctor, so I can't prescribe them. What I do know is that there are a lot of people, I think, who are on medication because no one's given them the right mental strategies to do. And I often joke with people that telling people to. I mean, the three things that everyone tells you to do with anxiety are take deep breaths, do positive thinking, or distraction. And quite frankly, those three things are about as effective as trying to fix your computer with a rubber duck. Like, it just doesn't work. This is not the right tools for the job. But if that's all we're given, and then people are getting very anxious and worried about it, they'll end up on medication. So first point of call is, I think if people can do appropriate therapy, be solution focused, or do things that are going to help their body to know that they're safe and to practice mindsets of dealing with anxiety more effectively, that's going to make a world of difference. That really is going to help. I have come across some people that I've worked with, and it becomes clear that they are in such a state of anxiety that it doesn't matter what you say. They can't process it. They can't hear. They can't. And at times I have said to people, look, it might be useful for you to talk to your doctor about getting some medical input here, because if chemically we can just help the body calm down a little bit, and take the edge off, it might create a little bit of space for you to be able to hear more of what I'm saying, more of the techniques, and give you back a little bit more time and space to practice this stuff that's going to help. And then as you get good at that, then you begin to come off medication. I think being on medication for life or anxiety is not the goal. I think understanding the mindset behind it, is a useful thing. Had to pop off. We'll watch the replay. Great stuff. No, absolute pleasure. Yeah, the depression comes from the feeling there is no way of being anxiety free and we are stagnated. Yeah. But I think a lot of the reason why we often feel unfixable is because we spend a long time doing the wrong things, which means that a lot of people with anxiety end up feeling terribly miserable and terribly at their wits' end, and feeling like no one and nothing can help. Yes, physiology, understanding, and the tools, absolutely. That was a very thoughtful and great answer to my question. Thank you. No, absolute pleasure. Listen, I'm just looking at the time, and honestly, they fly by for me, these things. If anyone's got any final questions, please do let me know, because we're coming towards the end. There is an extra little thing that I'd like to just show you, and it's mainly because I'm excited about it. I'm excited. There's no denying it. Come the new year, right? I released something. I've been meaning to do it for a while, but over the last 23 years of helping people with anxiety, and helping them to kind of navigate these things, I've become a collector of what I would call as many quick fire, powerful, rapid techniques to reduce the feeling of overwhelm and panic when it comes. Like, obviously, the ideal scenario with anxiety is that we learn how to navigate it so that it never really comes up at all. It never really bothers us. But a lot of people will say, well, Howard, if I do suddenly find myself in overwhelm, in anxiety, what do I do? And there are kind of 5 key patterns that some of them, they work in different ways, but some are physiological hacks that just, it's a shortcut to the brain, which just stops and reduces anxiety. Some are more cognitive and take a bit of practicing, but these are my go-to that I often share with my high-paying one-on-one clients. And obviously, if anyone does want any one-on-one work, please do reach out and let me know. But I actually recorded all of these things, these patterns, in what's called an Extinguish Anxiety program. And these are 5 game-changing methods to extinguish anxiety like magic. I also made it, and everyone told me I was mad to do it. It seemed like a bit of an idiotic thing to do, but I made it £27. So it was like really, really cost-effective. You know, it's less than, some people will spend that in a week on coffee and ramp up the system, and you could do this and you could have 5 go-to ways of beating anxiety were it to strike. It's a nice, simple program. It's take you through it all. But I was really excited about that because I launched it at the beginning of January and we're having some really good feedback from it. So feel free to check that out. Oh, there we go. Oh, someone says they've got it. It's really great. Fantastic. I'm really, really pleased. Thank you so much. We'll put that up there. There you go. It's really great. Marvelous. Perfect. I will, when the replay goes up, I will put a link directly to that so that you can get access to it. But if you went to rapidchange.works right now and then you clicked on shop, you'd see the Extinguish Anxiety program in there and you would be able to get access. But I will put the link especially underneath this as well. In fact, I've just realized something. I can put the link in here myself in the comments. There we go. Boom. There it is. There's the link. So if you want, you can go and check that out, get access to it. And that's that. I've really, really enjoyed spending time with you all. I really love it. And I really appreciate this all. Now, listen, someone says, do I have a streaming schedule? I'd like to visit your streams more often. It's my first time, but I saw your videos in the past, found them really useful, just like the stream. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. Honestly, I love these. It's a slightly different field than the videos that I do, but it's just me shooting the breeze with you all. I try and go on once a month. That is the resolution for this year. So the idea is I'm going to do 2 YouTube videos a month and 1 live. So that's the plan. But if you follow my socials and subscribe on YouTube, then what happens is you will be notified when the lives get launched and so on. So listen, thank you so much all for joining. I've had a great time. Oh, Helen says, are you on TV again soon? Oh God, I'm not allowed to say. But what I would say is chances are looking up, and I assure you, as soon as I know, I will be letting you all know. But it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in February, back on BBC Morning Live. But I can't guarantee it. I don't know. Who knows? It's just a fingers crossed. But yes, there we go. I didn't tell you that, by the way. Okay, all right. Listen. All the best, everyone. Have a good rest of the evening. Go chill out and see you all soon.